The rain was not falling that night. It was attacking. Big, heavy drops crashed down from the sky like the heavens themselves were angry. Thunder shook the ground. Lightning split the darkness wide open. And in the middle of all that chaos, standing at the edge of a dirty road in Benin City, Nigeria, was a woman named Amara. She was not alone. In her arms, she held a tiny baby wrapped in a thin cloth. The baby's name was Chisholm. She was only 6 weeks old. Her little face was wet from the rain. Her small body was trembling. She wasn't even crying anymore. She had cried so much that night, she had no more tears left. Beside Amara stood 2 more children. Emeka, her son, 7 years old, was barefoot on the wet concrete. His school uniform was soaked through. He wasn't saying anything. He was just staring at the gate of their house. The big iron gate that had just been slammed shut in their faces. And then there was Ngozi, 5 years old, holding onto her mother's wrapper so tightly that her tiny knuckles had gone pale. She kept looking up at her mother's face, waiting for her to say something. Waiting for her to fix it. Because that's what mothers do, right? They fix things. But Amara could not speak. She was shaking, and it wasn't from the cold. On the other side of that gate, she could hear footsteps walking away. She could hear a door close. And then silence. Just the rain. Just the thunder. Just the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Her husband, the man she had cooked for, prayed for, sacrificed for, had just thrown her and her 3 children out of their own home. In the middle of the night. In the middle of the rain. With nowhere to go. Now, standing there on that road, Amara looked down at little Ngozi's face. Her daughter's eyes were asking a question that had no easy answer. "Mummy, what do we do now?" And right at that moment, just as Amara opened her mouth to speak, something happened that made her blood run cold. Little Chisholm, the baby in her arms, stopped moving. Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? I see people joining from Lagos, from London, from Houston, from Canada, from South Africa. Let me see your location in that comment section right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. It's free, and it helps this channel grow, so we can keep bringing you stories like this one. Now let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand how Amara ended up on that road in the rain, you need to understand who she was before everything fell apart. Amara Osei grew up in a small compound in Ugbowo, a neighborhood on the outskirts of Benin City. Her father, Mr. Osei, was a quiet man who repaired shoes by the roadside. Her mother, Mama Osei, sold akra and pap in front of their compound every morning before the sun was fully up. They were not rich. Not even close. But they had something that money cannot buy. They had love. Amara grew up watching her parents work hard and laugh loud. She saw her father hold her mother's hand when times were tough. She saw her mother pray over her father when he was sick. And she made a quiet promise to herself when she was just a girl. When I grow up, I will have a family like that. She was a bright child. Quick with numbers. Her teachers always said she had potential. But when she finished secondary school, there was no money for university. So instead, Amara learned to sew. She became a tailor, a good one. She set up a small table in the market, and slowly she built a little business. It wasn't much, but it was hers. By the time she was 24, she had saved enough to rent a single room. She was proud of herself, standing on her own 2 feet, not depending on anyone. That was when she met Dare Fashola. Dare was the kind of man who walked into a room and made everyone look up. He was tall, well-dressed, and he had this way of talking, smooth and confident, that made you feel like everything he said was the absolute truth. He drove a neat Toyota Camry and worked as a sales manager for a building materials company. He told Amara he was going places, and she believed him. Their relationship started simply. He came to her stall one day, needing a button sewn onto his shirt. She fixed it in 10 minutes. He came back the next day, and the day after that. By the 3rd week, he was bringing her jollof rice in a takeaway pack and sitting across from her while she worked, just talking. He made her laugh. He made her feel seen. 6 months later, he proposed. Amara's mother was cautious. "My daughter," she said, "a man who moves fast can also leave fast. Take your time and look well." But Amara was in love. And when you are in love, sometimes you only hear what you want to hear. They got married quietly in 2011. No big ceremony. Just family, a small chop, and music from a neighbor's speaker. Amara wore a blue lace dress she had sewn herself. She cried happy tears when the pastor pronounced them husband and wife. She thought the hard part of her life was finally over. She had no idea it had not even started yet. The first year of their marriage was good. Not perfect, but good. Dare worked long hours. Amara continued sewing. They moved into a 2-bedroom flat in a quiet street, and when Amara got pregnant with Emeka, Dare was so happy he bought a small cake and danced in the kitchen. But something shifted after Emeka was born. At first, Amara couldn't name it. It was just a feeling, like a small shadow in the corner of a sunny room. Dare started coming home later. He stopped sitting with her in the evenings. He stopped laughing at her jokes. When she tried to talk to him, he would look at his phone instead of her face. She told herself it was stress. She told herself he was tired. She told herself things would get better. Ngozi came 2 years after Emeka. Another pregnancy. Another baby. And with each baby, Dare pulled further away. He started snapping at Amara over small things. If the food was a little salty, he would raise his voice. If Emeka cried in the night, he would blame her. If she asked where he had been, he would say she was too demanding. By the 3rd year of marriage, Amara had stopped sewing. She couldn't manage the stall with 2 small children, and Dare had told her to focus on the home. So she did. She became fully dependent on whatever money he gave her. And slowly, without even realizing it, she lost the little independence she had built. Then came the 4th year. And with it, the truth. It was Ngozi who found it, actually. Ngozi, then 4 years old, was playing with her father's old jacket one afternoon while Amara was cooking in the kitchen. She pulled something out of the inner pocket and ran to her mother. Mummy, picture." Amara wiped her hands on her wrapper and looked down. It was a photograph, printed on glossy paper. In the photo, Dare was standing with a woman, a younger woman, maybe early 20s, and between them was a baby boy, maybe 1 year old. Dare was smiling in that photo. The wide, open smile that Amara hadn't seen on his face in over 2 years. On the back of the photograph, someone had written in blue pen, "Our son, Emmanuel, born March 3rd. With love, Titi." Amara stood in her kitchen for a very long time. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there, holding that photo, while the soup on the fire began to burn. When Dare came home that night, she placed the photo on the table in front of him without saying a word. He looked at it. He looked at her. And then he did something she never expected. He didn't deny it. "I was going to tell you," he said, sitting down slowly. "Her name is Titi. We've been together for a while." "How long?" Amara's voice was very quiet. 3 years. 3 years. Their entire marriage, almost. While Amara was pregnant, while she was breastfeeding, while she was raising his children, this man had been building another life with another woman. "She's pregnant again," Dare said. "And he stopped. He rubbed his face with both hands. "I want to bring her here, Amara. Into this house. As my second wife." The room went very quiet. "I'm telling you now because I respect you," he said. "I'm not hiding it anymore." Amara looked at her husband for a long time. Then she said very calmly, "Get out of this house." Dare blinked. "Amara, get out." He left that night. Slept elsewhere. For 2 weeks, there was silence. No calls. No money sent. Amara survived on what little she had saved from her sewing days. She fed the children. She held herself together. She thought he would come back with sense. Instead, he came back with something much worse. It was a Thursday night when Dare came back to the house. But he didn't come alone. He came with Titi, the other woman, visibly pregnant, and 2 men Amara had never seen before. Big men, standing at the door like guards. Dare walked in, looked around the living room, and said very calmly, "Pack your things, Amara. You and the children need to leave tonight." Amara could not believe what she was hearing. "This is my house too," she said. "My name is not on the rent agreement," Dare said. Cold. Final. Like he had rehearsed it. "The landlord is a friend of mine. I've already spoken to him. This house is in my name. You have no rights here." Titi stood by the door, watching, saying nothing. Amara looked at the 2 men. She looked at Dare. She thought about her children. Emeka asleep in the back room. Ngozi playing with blocks on the floor. Baby Chisholm only 6 weeks old in the cot. And she realized slowly, with a cold and terrible clarity, that this man had planned this moment. This was not anger. This was not a fight. This had been prepared. She tried to call her brother. No answer. She tried her sister. The phone rang and rang. Outside, the sky was already rumbling. Rain was coming. She begged Dare. She lowered her pride and she begged him. Not for herself, but for the children. At least let the children sleep here tonight, she said. Chisholm is only 6 weeks old. She cannot be in the rain. Dare looked at the baby in Amara's arms. And then he looked away. You have 30 minutes, he said, and walked into the bedroom. 30 minutes. That was all the time Amara had to pack 3 children and whatever she could carry into the night. She moved quickly, but her hands were shaking. She grabbed a small bag, diapers for Chisholm, a change of clothes for Emeka and Ngozi, her phone, and the small envelope of money she kept hidden under the mattress. 3,000 naira. That was everything she had. She woke Emeka gently. We're going on a trip, she told him, because she didn't know what else to say. He was 7. He was smart. He looked at her face and knew it wasn't a trip. But he nodded anyway, and he put on his shoes without being asked. She carried Chisholm. She held Ngozi's hand. And when the 30 minutes were up, Dare opened the front door and waited. Amara walked out into the rain with her 3 children. The gate clanged shut behind her. And that is where we started. That is the moment we opened with, Amara on the roadside, rain pouring, baby Chisholm trembling in her arms, little Ngozi gripping her wrapper, Emeka standing there barefoot on the wet concrete, staring at a gate that would never open for them again. But remember, right at that moment something happened. Baby Chisholm had stopped moving. Amara looked down at the 6-week-old baby in her arms. The tiny body had gone still. The shivering had stopped. And in the middle of that dark, rainy road, Amara's heart dropped to the ground. Chisholm, she whispered. Chisholm. She unwrapped the cloth with trembling fingers, shielding the baby from the rain with her body. The baby's lips were pale. Her eyes were closed. Chisholm. Emeka grabbed his mother's arm. Mummy, what happened? What happened to the baby? Ngozi started screaming. Amara pressed her ear to the baby's tiny chest, and then she heard it. Faint. Slow. But there. A heartbeat. Chisholm was alive, but her body temperature was dangerously low. She needed warmth. She needed shelter. Now. Amara looked up and down the empty road. Rain poured down. No taxi. No Kiki. No one. Just darkness and water and 3 children and 3,000 naira and nowhere to go. She started walking. She didn't know where she was going. She just walked, baby pressed tight against her chest, Ngozi pulled close on one side, Emeka jogging to keep up on the other. She walked until she saw something in the distance, a large gray shape in the dark. Walls with no roof. Open windows with no glass. An uncompleted building. It wasn't shelter. Not really. But it was something between her and the sky. She ducked inside, found a dry corner, and sat on the bare concrete floor with her children around her. She held Chisholm close to her body. She used her own warmth. She didn't have a towel. She didn't have a blanket. She just held that baby and rocked her and breathed on her little face and whispered over and over. Stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with me. Emeka sat behind his mother and pressed his small body against her back, trying to give her warmth too. They sat like that all night. When morning came, Amara had not slept. Chisholm was breathing steadily now. Some color had returned to her cheeks. Ngozi had fallen asleep leaning against her mother. Emeka was awake, sitting straight, watching the entrance to the building like a small soldier guarding a fort. Amara looked around at the bare concrete walls, the empty windows, the rubble on the floor. This was her home now. She had 3,000 naira, a bag with a few clothes, a phone with 10% battery and no data. 3 children, one of them a newborn. She called her brother again. This time he picked up. She told him everything. Her voice was steady. She was not crying. There was a long silence on the other end. Then her brother said, Amara, you know how things are. I have my wife, my children. There is no space here. I'm not asking for space, she said. I'm asking you to help me find somewhere. I'll send you something small, he said. Give me time. He hung up. She called her sister. Her sister's husband answered instead and said his wife was asleep. He would give her the message. No one called back. By midday, Amara understood something clearly. Something she would carry for the rest of her life. In this world, you cannot wait for people to save you. You have to save yourself. She counted her money. 3,000 naira. She bought sachet water and bread, enough to feed the children twice. She gave Emeka the bigger share. She gave Ngozi 2 biscuits and watched her daughter eat them like they were a 5-course meal. She fed Chisholm and held her close. Then she sat there in that unfinished building, on that hard floor, and she asked herself the question that would change everything. What can I do? She couldn't go back to her sewing stall without money to restart. She couldn't find a job without leaving the children alone. She had no references, no office clothes, no address to put on a form. For 3 days, she and the children lived in that building. Amara begged, not for herself, but to feed her children. She stood outside a church. She stood near a market. She held out her hand with a sleeping baby against her chest, and she asked strangers for help. Some walked past. Some sneered. One woman gave her a full pot of soup without being asked and told her, "God will see you through." By the 4th day, the money was gone. Chisholm needed more diapers. Emeka had developed a cough from sleeping on cold concrete. Ngozi kept asking in her small 5-year-old voice, "Mummy, when are we going home?" And Amara had run out of ways to answer that question. So on the 5th morning, she did something that even she could not fully believe. She got up before dawn. She washed her face with sachet water. She smoothed her wrapper. She left the children with a kind elderly woman who had noticed them sleeping in the building and offered to watch them while Amara sorted something out. Then Amara walked to Usula Motor Park. Usula Motor Park was not a place for soft people. It was loud, dusty, and full of energy from before the sun rose. Bus drivers, conductors, touts, traders. Everyone moving at once, everyone shouting at once. The buses were old and dented. The ground was cracked and stained with engine oil. Men in singlets and rubber slippers argued over routes. Young boys hung off the sides of moving Danfo buses, screaming destinations at anyone who came close. Amara stood at the entrance and watched all of this. Then she walked in. People stared. A woman in a wrapper, walking into a motor park at 6 in the morning with no luggage and no destination. She stood out. A group of conductors near the gate stopped talking and watched her. She walked up to the oldest-looking driver she could find. He was sitting on the hood of his bus, drinking Lipton tea from a tin cup, reading a newspaper. "Good morning, sir," she said. He looked at her over his newspaper. "Morning. I am looking for work. I want to be a conductor." The man stared at her for a very long time. Then he started laughing. Not a small chuckle. A big, full-belly laugh that made the men nearby turn and look. He slapped his knee. He pointed at her. He said something in Bini to the men nearby, and they all laughed too. Amara stood there. She did not smile. She did not look away. When the laughter died down, she said again, quietly but firmly, "I am looking for work. I want to be a conductor. I will do the job well. I do not need high pay. I need something that will feed my children today." The old driver, his name was Baba Khalad, looked at her properly for the first time. He saw the tiredness in her eyes, the set jaw, the straight back of a woman who had made up her mind. He folded his newspaper. "You know this job," he said. "You know what it means? Standing on a moving bus? Collecting fares from angry people? Fighting for passengers in the park? This is not woman's work. All work is woman's work," Amara said, "when she has children to feed." Silence. Baba Khalad took a slow sip of his tea. He looked her up and down one more time. "Come back tomorrow," he said. 5 a.m. sharp. "If you late, I go tell you come at my site." Amara nodded. "I will be here." She turned and walked out of the motor park. Behind her, she could hear the men laughing again. She let them laugh. The next morning, Amara was at Usula Motor Park at 4:45 a.m. She was wearing a plain dress and flat slippers. Her hair was tied back. She had left Chisholm in the care of the elderly neighbor. The woman had seen her return the previous evening and offered, without being asked, to help again. Emeka had held her hand at the door and looked up at her with those big, serious eyes. "Where are you going, Mummy?" "To work," she said. And something in the way she said it, calm, certain, final, made Emeka nod slowly, the way old men nod when they understand something important. She arrived at the park and found Baba Khalad already there. He didn't look surprised. He handed her a worn-out cash pouch and pointed to the bus. "Route is New Benin to Ugbowo. You call passengers, you collect fare, you give me my money at the end of the day. Anything remaining, na your share. Understand?" "I understand," she said. "One more thing," he said, and his voice dropped lower. "The other conductors, they will try you today. Some go abuse you. Some go disrespect you. The passengers self go look at you somehow. You sure say you can handle Am?" Amara picked up the cash pouch. She looked at Baba Khalad with eyes that had slept on concrete floors, that had watched a newborn baby go cold in the rain, that had begged strangers for bread. "Sir," she said. I have already survived the worst thing that has ever happened to me. This bus is nothing. She climbed into the Danfo. And right at that moment, right as the engine roared to life and the bus lurched forward into the early morning Benin City traffic, she looked out the cracked window and saw something that made her stomach drop. Standing at the entrance to the motor park, watching her with cold, calculating eyes, was Dare, her husband. He had found her. Dare was standing there, at the entrance of Usala Motor Park, in his clean shirt and his pressed trousers, looking completely out of place among the dusty buses and the sweating conductors. He had his hands in his pockets. His face was unreadable, not angry, not sad. Just watching her. The Danfo bus lurched forward again, and for a moment, Amara thought she could just go. Just let the bus carry her away into the morning traffic and pretend she hadn't seen him. Pretend he was a ghost. Pretend the last 2 weeks had not happened. But the bus slowed for a passenger, and in that pause, that terrible brief pause, their eyes met. Dare took a step forward. Amara! G.O., she screamed at the driver, and the bus shot forward into the road. She gripped the door frame and breathed. Her knuckles were white. Her heart was hammering. But she kept her face forward. She kept her eyes on the road. She had work to do. What nobody tells you about being a bus conductor is how physical it is. From 5 in the morning until sometimes 8 at night, Amara was on her feet, hanging off the side of a moving bus, shouting destinations into the thick Benin City air. New Benin. Ugbowo. Enter with your change o. Her voice, once soft and gentle, became something else entirely. Loud. Sharp. Cutting through noise the way a knife cuts through cloth. The other conductors did exactly what Baba Khalad warned her about. On the first day, a young conductor named Sheena laughed so hard when she tried to compete for passengers that he doubled over by the roadside. This woman won't collect our money, he shouted to everyone. Madam Conductor. Ha! The other boys joined in. They imitated her voice. They mimicked the way she stood. Amara ignored every single one of them. She focused on the passengers. She learned quickly that people didn't want to be shouted at. They wanted to feel welcomed. While the other conductors were aggressive and grabby, Amara was firm but respectful. She remembered faces. She gave correct change without being asked. She helped elderly passengers with their bags. She kept the bus moving. By the end of the first week, something small but significant happened. Some regular passengers started looking for her bus specifically. An old woman named Mama Josephine who sold tomatoes at the market told Baba Khalad, "That your woman conductor, she good oh. She no go cheat me. Every day I go find her bus." Baba Khalad didn't say anything to Amara directly, but she noticed that he started giving her the busiest routes. The money was not much. On a good day, she made between 1,500 and 2,500 naira as her share. On a bad day, less. But it was consistent. It was hers. And it was enough, barely enough, to keep the children fed and to keep them in the uncompleted building that had become their home. She made the building work. She found cardboard from the market and laid it over the concrete floor. A church gave her 2 thin mattresses after she attended a Sunday service, and the pastor's wife saw her situation. She hung a curtain in the corner using rope and an old wrapper to create a small private space for the children. She found a kerosene stove. She found a plastic bucket for water. It was not a home, but it had a mother in it, and that made all the difference. 3 months into her life as a conductor, Emeka collapsed at school. His teacher sent a note to the motor park. Someone had gotten the number from a neighbor, and Amara left the bus mid-route and ran. The school was a 30-minute walk. She covered it in 15. Emeka was lying on a bench in the headmistress's office, pale and sweating. Malaria, the headmistress suspected. He needed a clinic, medication, and rest. 3 things that each cost money Amara did not currently have. She sat beside her son and held his hand. He opened his eyes and looked at her. "Mummy," he whispered. "I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" she said. "For being sick. I know it costs money." 7 years old. 7 years old, and already carrying guilt about money. Amara pressed her lips together and breathed slowly through her nose so she would not cry in front of him. Then she straightened up, kissed his forehead, and walked to the headmistress. "Can he stay here for 1 hour? I will be back with money for the clinic." She went back to the park. She walked up to Baba Khalad and explained the situation clearly, without begging. "I need an advance. I will work it back." Baba Khalad was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out 5,000 naira. He held it out to her. "No advance," he said gruffly. "Na gift. Go take care of your Pekin." Amara stared at the money. Then she looked at the old man. "God bless you," she said softly. "Idon do," he waved her away, already turning back to his newspaper. "Go." Emeka recovered fully within 2 weeks. But that moment, her 7-year-old son apologizing for being sick, that moment never left Amara. It hardened something inside her. Not in a cold or bitter way. In a determined way. She decided that her children would never have to apologize for needing things again. 1 year passed. Then 2. Then 3. And slowly, quietly, the story of Amara, the woman conductor of Usula Motor Park, began to spread. She was not just surviving anymore. She was building. In her 2nd year, she saved enough to rent a single room in a proper face-me-face-you compound. It had a door that locked and a ceiling that didn't let rain in. The night she moved her children in, Ngozi ran to every corner of the room, touching the walls like she was making sure they were real. Chisholm, now almost 2 years old and walking, laughed at everything Ngozi did. Emeka sat on the mattress and said very seriously, "This is better." "Yes," Amara agreed. "This is better." She was also learning. Every spare moment on the bus, she was observing how the motor park economy worked, where the money really was, not just in conducting, but in owning buses, routes, numbers. She started talking to other drivers, asking questions, listening more than she spoke. An older driver named Alhaji Musa, who owned 3 buses and a spare parts shop, noticed her curiosity and began teaching her things informally. How routes were assigned, how to negotiate with the motor park authorities, how ownership worked. "A conductor makes food money," Alhaji Musa told her one afternoon. "A bus owner makes building money. Decide which one you want to be." Amara had already decided. By the end of her 3rd year at the motor park, she had saved 60,000 naira. Carefully, painfully, naira by naira. She added it to a small cooperative loan she had joined. Together, she had enough to buy 1 second-hand bus. Old, yes. Dented, yes. But running. The day she drove that bus into the motor park under her own name, the whole park stopped to watch. Sheena, the same conductor who had laughed at her on her first day, came to stand beside her. He was quiet for a moment, looking at the bus. Then he turned to her and said, without a trace of mockery this time, "Madam Amara, you don't show us." She looked at him evenly. "I didn't do it to show anyone." She walked away to begin her first day as an owner. It was Baba Khalad who introduced her to Mr. Sunday Adeyemi. Sunday was a civil engineer who had contracted Baba Khalad's buses a few times for staff transportation. He was quiet, careful with his words, and had a son from a previous relationship. He was not looking for anything complicated. Neither was Amara. Their first real conversation happened outside the park, at a small buka where Amara sometimes ate after her evening count. He was sitting alone reading a technical manual, and she asked, without thinking, what it was about. He explained. She asked a follow-up question that surprised him. Then another. They ended up talking for 2 hours. He did not try to impress her. He did not offer to solve her problems. He just talked to her like she was a person with a brain, and she did the same for him. Over 6 months, they built a slow and careful friendship. He met Emeka, Ngozi, and Chisholm one Sunday afternoon at a small outing. He brought chin-chin and bottles of Fanta and sat on the mat playing Ludo with the children like he had no agenda in the world. Chisholm, for years old by then, climbed onto his back without being invited. He laughed and carried her around the compound while she screamed with delight. Amara watched from the doorway. She was terrified. Love had broken her before. Trust had broken her before. And the scars from that night in the rain, the night Dare threw her and her babies into the storm, those scars did not simply vanish because a good man brought chin-chin. One evening, Sunday sat with her and said, "I know you're scared. I see it. I'm not in a hurry. I just want you to know that I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." She looked at him for a long time. "I have 3 children," she said. "By another man. A man who threw us out in the rain." "I know," Sunday said quietly. "This is not a simple situation." "I know that too," he said. "I'm still here." 2 years later, they were married. A quiet ceremony with close friends and the children. Emeka, now 12, wore a small agbada and took his role as official ring-bearer very seriously. Ngozi cried happy tears she tried to hide by looking at the ceiling. Chisholm, 6 years old, told everyone at the wedding that she was the most beautiful person there, and nobody argued with her. It was the second time Amara had stood before a pastor in a wedding. But this time felt different. This time, she was not coming from a place of need. She was not looking for rescue. She was choosing. Freely. Fully. With her eyes wide open. The years did what years do. They passed. And in their passing, they carried something remarkable. Emeka, the 7-year-old boy who had stood barefoot in the rain and put on his shoes without being asked, grew into a tall, focused young man. He studied engineering at the University of Benin. He graduated with a second-class upper. He got a job with an oil servicing company in Port Harcourt and sent money home every month before Amara even asked. The first time he sent money, Amara sat with his message on her phone for a long time and just cried. Not from sadness. From something she could not name. Something that felt like a debt being paid. Not by him, but by life itself. Ngozi became a nurse. She had decided this when she was 9 years old, watching Amara care for a sick neighbor in their compound with quiet, steady hands. Mummy's hands fix things, Ngozi had said then. Now her own hands fix things. In a government hospital in Benin City, where she quickly became known for never losing her patience with difficult patients. She was kind in the way her mother was kind. Not soft, but true. Chisholm, the baby who had gone still in the rain, the 6-week-old who had almost been taken by a cold night, grew up to be the loudest, brightest, most unstoppable person in any room she entered. She studied business administration. She graduated top of her class. By 22, she was helping her mother register their growing transport business as a proper company. Amara now owned 5 buses. She had 2 employees. She was in discussions with a hotel group about a staff transportation contract that would change everything. The woman who had begged for bread outside a church, she now employed people. The woman who had slept on cardboard on a concrete floor, she now owned a 3-bedroom house in a quiet Benin City neighborhood, with real ceilings and tiled floors and a small garden where Chisholm had planted tomatoes that nobody had asked her to plant. Life was not perfect. Life is never perfect. There were hard months. There were arguments with Sunday, reconciliations, tears, growth. There was the year Emeka had a health scare that sent them all into panic. There was the time one of Amara's buses was in an accident, and she had to start almost from scratch on that route. But through all of it, she did not fall. She had learned, in that uncompleted building in the rain, that falling is not the end. The end only comes when you decide to stay down. Amara had never stayed down. She was at the motor park on a Tuesday morning, not conducting anymore, just checking in on her buses, reviewing the day's routes with her lead driver, when she saw him. 14 years had passed since that rainy night. Dare had aged. He was heavier now. His hair had gone gray at the temples. He was wearing a faded polo shirt that was nothing like the pressed clothes she remembered. He walked into the motor park slowly, looking around, until his eyes found her. He stopped. She looked at him for a moment. Then she turned back to her driver and finished her sentence about the route. When she turned around again, Dare was still standing there. She walked toward him. Not with anger. Not with tears. Just walked toward him the way you walk toward something you've already made your peace with. Amara, he said. Dare, she replied. Up close, the change in him was more obvious. He looked tired in a deep way. The kind of tired that sleep cannot fix. His eyes carried something, regret, maybe. Or the shadow of choices made and unmade. Can we talk? He said. She studied him. Then she gestured to a bench near the park wall. They sat. There was a long silence. Around them, the motor park continued its noise. Buses, conductors, passengers, the smell of exhaust and pepper soup from a nearby stall. Life continuing, indifferent to their history. I heard about you, Dare began. People talk. I heard about the buses. About Emeka working in Port Harcourt. About Ngozi being a nurse. About, he stopped. His jaw tightened. I heard everything. Amara said nothing. Titi left me, he said. 3 years after you, she left. Took the children. I lost my job the same year. I've been struggling. He looked at his hands. I came because I wanted to. He struggled with the word. I wanted to apologize, Amara. For what I did. For that night. For throwing you and the children. His voice broke slightly. He steadied himself. Not a day has passed that I haven't thought about it. About Chisholm in the rain. She was 6 weeks old. The motor park noise continued around them. Amara looked at this man. This man who had been her whole world once. This man who had destroyed it in a single night with 2 hired muscle men and a pregnant girlfriend by the door. She looked at him and she searched herself, honestly, the way she had learned to be honest with herself through years of surviving. And she asked, "What do I feel?" Not rage. The rage had burned out long ago. You cannot carry that weight and also carry 5 children, 5 buses, and a whole life forward. She had put the rage down somewhere around year 3 and never picked it back up. Not love. That too was gone. Not killed, just dissolved over time like salt in water. Gone without drama. What she felt, she realized, was something close to pity. Not contempt. Not superiority. Just the quiet sadness you feel when you look at a person who had everything and chose to waste it. "Dare," she said finally calmly. "I forgave you a long time ago." He looked up sharply, as if he hadn't expected that. "Not for you," she continued. "For me. Because I couldn't move forward carrying the weight of what you did. So I put it down. And I moved forward." He was quiet. "My children are fine," she said. "Better than fine. Emeka doesn't ask about you. Ngozi made her peace years ago. Chisholm," she paused. "Chisholm doesn't really know the full story yet. One day she will. And she will process it in her own way. Does she know I'm her father?" "She knows she has a biological father who is not in her life," Amara said. "She also has a father who comes to her school events and cries at her graduation and taught her to ride a bicycle. His name is Sunday. He has been enough." Dare flinched. "I'm not saying this to hurt you," Amara said, and she meant it. "I'm saying it so you understand. Your absence was filled. We did not wait for you. We built something without you. And what we built," she looked out at the park, at her buses, at the workers she now employed, at the life she had carved out of nothing. "What we built is good." Another long silence. "Is there anything I can do?" Dare asked. "Anything. Live your life, Dare," she said gently. "Make peace with your choices. That's the only thing any of us can do." She stood up. He looked up at her. This woman who had once stood in the rain with nothing. And the look on his face was something complicated and irreversible. Regret does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it just sits on a park bench and watches what it lost walk away. Amara straightened her dress. "Take care of yourself," she said. And she walked back into the noise of the motor park. Back to her drivers, her buses, her work, her life. She did not look back. That evening, Amara sat in her garden. The tomatoes Chisholm had planted were doing well. Sunday was inside watching the news. She could hear him laughing at something. A sound she had grown so used to that its absence would now feel strange. Ngozi had called earlier from the hospital, just to check in. Emeka had sent a voice note, his voice strong and warm across the phone speaker. "Mummy, I'm coming home this weekend. Tell Auntie Chisholm to make her jollof." Amara sat with a cup of tea and looked at the evening sky. She thought about that night. The rain. The gate slamming shut. The cold concrete floor. The 3,000 naira. The motor park. Baba Khalad's gruff voice. Sheena's laughter. The first day she hung off the side of a bus and screamed a destination into moving traffic and felt, underneath the exhaustion and the fear, a small wild flame of something that might have been freedom. She thought about the woman she had been on that road, soaked and terrified and alone. And she thought about the woman sitting in this garden now. Same hands, same eyes, same heart. But everything else had changed. She had not been rescued. She had not been lucky. She had not waited for the world to be fair, because the world is not fair, and waiting for fairness is just another way of staying still. She had gotten up. In the rain. On a concrete floor. In a motor park full of men who laughed at her. She had gotten up and gotten up and gotten up again. Every single time life knocked her down, until getting up became the most natural thing she knew how to do. Chisholm came bounding out of the back door with a plate of sliced mango. "Mummy, come inside. Daddy said there's a good film starting." Amara looked at her youngest child. This bright, loud, unstoppable girl who had once been a 6-week-old baby trembling in the rain. This child who had almost been taken by a cold night and had instead grown up to plant tomatoes and laugh at everything and fill every room she entered with noise. Amara smiled. "I'm coming," she said. She set down her tea. She stood up. She followed her daughter inside. The garden was quiet behind her. The tomatoes were growing. The evening was warm. And in that house, filled with laughter, with Sunday's voice, with the smell of food, with the sound of life continuing its beautiful, difficult, unstoppable work. Amara was finally home. She was thrown out with nothing. She came back with everything that matters. And that is the story of Amara, a woman who refused to stay down. If this story moved you, if it inspired you, if it reminded you that your current situation is not your final destination, please subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Every subscription helps us keep bringing you stories of real strength, real pain, and real victory. Drop a comment below. What was the moment in this story that hit you the hardest? Was it the rain? Was it Emeka apologizing for being sick? Was it the moment Amara walked away from Dare without looking back? Tell me. I read every single comment. God bless you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.